Hi and welcome to Bite-Sized Bat Rips, where we bring you great battle reports without taking up a great deal of your time. So we're back with By Fire and Sword, and this time around I decided to do something a little bit different and put together a narrative game that's going to be actually 4 different games linked together by an overarching narrative that kind of ties it all together. And it'll be a bunch of skirmishes that end up in a big divisional game. So the setting, and this is all made up, so none of this is historical. All the names have been made up, just in case you go looking for this. The setting is that my Swedish division and a Tatar division have been kind of circling around each other and trying to pin the enemy down until finally around the small town of Kobograd they decide to take to the field and fight a battle. And this is a strategically important town for the larger campaign. So the game itself will be first composed of 3 skirmish games and then a divisional battle, where each of the results from the skirmish games leads into or falls into the final game. So we'll kick off with a patrol scenario that we'll see the 2 forces trying to scout each other out and scout the battlefield, and that will translate to the reconnaissance score for the divisional battle. And then we'll do a take and hold scenario for the Pontar Hill, which is this large hill on the eastern side of the field that dominates that portion of the map, which will allow the winner to deploy some units there in the final game. We'll do then an attack on the village for the town of Kobograd itself, where both commanders decide to sneak in some units and occupy the town before the enemy has a chance to do the same, and kind of anchor their divisions in this strong defensive position ahead of the main battle. And when we play the final divisional battle, the other effect will be the losses from these 3 scenarios will carry over to the final battle in a little bit of an abstract way. So this won't be a one-to-one thing where a regiment that maybe takes part in one of the scenarios loses some bases and has those bases not available. It'll be more abstracted away just as some form of losses. Okay, let's get started with Scenario 1, the early morning patrol, where both generals send scouting forces to reconnoiter the battlefield. So on the Swedish side, Colonel Amundsen is charged with about 700 veteran raiders and some national raiders to scout out the middle of the field and learn what he can. And opposing him is Mirza Timur with about 1,300 Tatar warriors armed with spears and bows. And he's also trying to figure out what's the composition of the Swedish forces and what's going on with the enemy. The scenario itself has a 2-point advantage towards the Swedes, so the Tatars are rolled up 2 effects, one of them being panic and one of them being march losses. So clearly the Swedish division had suffered some losses getting to this battle, and the fearsome reputation of the Tatar warriors precedes them and sees some of the Swedes panic at the beginning of the engagement. And here is Colonel Amundsen's scouting force of raiders, and Mirza Timur's large force of Tatar warriors. We deploy for battle, and the battlefield is actually very open because it is the middle of the kind of the game, or the final battle, so it's just fields and some roadways, which we don't have. And the 3 scouting points that both forces are trying to reconnoiter. Thanks to their reconnaissance advantage, the Tatars send 6 bases of spear-armed warriors in a flanking maneuver, so they'll come onto the field later on during the game, and 6 more bases get pushed up with forced march, so they're rushing towards that scouting point early. Let's get going. So, quick look around the Tatar lines, and my national raiders on the left side, armored veterans in the center. Okay, turn 1. So the panic and march losses affect what used to be a 2-base veteran company on the left side, and so they first lose a base because their horses just were too tired to fight or took too many losses. And then the other half, which is one remaining base, panics at the sight of the Tatars and they withdraw. So that small company is now gone from the game, and just the way the movement worked out, I won't be able to even rally them. Colonel Amundsen then decides to push his forces up in an ordered line as he advances towards the three scouting points. And in response, the Tatars advance in a wide front as Mirza Timur tries to encircle the Swedes and take advantage of his numerical superiority. And so he has a thin line of Tatars just going wide and trying to lap around the Swedes. Quick close-up before the arrows start flying on the left side. And in the shooting phase, the Tatars actually do cause a lot of wounds to the Swedes, but not quite enough to make them panic. So the National Raiders maintain their order and stay on the left side. A quick look at some Tatar warriors and the small force that's coming up around the side. Okay, let's kick off turn 2. So the Tatars seize initiative and they continue with their encircling maneuver. As you can see, they're forming a wide C shape around, or horseshoe shape around the Swedes, who now adopt a defensive position. Colonel Amundsen, having faced Tatars before, understands that an early charge into the Tatars is typically met with feigned flight and then encirclement. So he maintains his lines, puts his two side Raider squadrons into defensive formations, and he'll be maintaining his line while he wants to move up with his center formation. Quick look at the right side veterans with arquebuses, who now form a caracal, move up, and will open fire into the Tatars. And on the left side, the National Raiders go in the defensive and also caracal into the Tatars. And in the remaining moves, the armored veterans in the middle push up to scout that middle point. In the shooting phase, the veterans on the right side score some serious hits into the Tatars and force a panic test and actually push them back. So the rightmost Tatars have been pushed almost off the field. The veterans in the middle fire their pistols at the Tatars, score some hits, and also force a panic test and push them back. And in the remaining firing phase, the caracal second rank circles up towards the enemy, fires on the other Tatars, and also causes a panic test. So the veterans on the right side did extremely well. They pushed back 2 out of the 3 Tatar formations, and now are firmly in control of that side. On the left side, however, the Swedes were not so successful as the Tatars attacked them with deadly accurate bow fire, kill one base, and force them back in disorganization. And end of turn 2 looks like this, with the field being on the right side controlled by the Swedes with the veterans in good order, and in the middle the armored veterans are scouting that point, but on the left side the Swedes have been pushed back and they were unable to scout the point, while Mirza Timur is able to maintain his lines, and on the left side he scouted the leftmost point now with his forces and can continue encircling the Swedes. Turn 3, so the Swedes do rally their National Raiders, but the Tatars do not, so those 2 bases of Tatars are still disorganized. And in the movement phase, the Swedes push up on the right side towards the objective, as the veterans want to scout at that point. On the far left, the National Raiders also push towards the objective. And in the middle, Colonel Amundsen maintains his defensive posture, and he puts the armored Raiders in a caracal yet again, trying to keep the Tatars at bay, as he was expecting them to perhaps attack. But the Tatars actually adopt a shooting formation and will maintain their position. Swedes on the right side advance, and in the middle the veterans try to shoot the enemy with a caracal, but there's actually no one in range, so that they are unable to do anything useful. And the far left, some encircling Tatar warriors. So in their own movement phase, the Tatars move up and then circle the National Raiders and fire some really accurate volleys into them, causing really significant casualties, killing 2 more bases, forcing a panic test, and actually making them flee. So the National Raiders have seen enough, they lost half of their company, and they withdraw in complete disorder, fleeing towards their own lines. And on the right side, the flanking maneuver, Tatars come onto the board. The spear-armed Thorak shows up and now threatens the Swedish right. End of turn 3 looks like this, with the left side having completely collapsed for the Swedes as the Raiders flee, and they were still unable to scout at that point. Mirza Timur is completely in control of the left, but on the right side the Swedes are dominating the field, although they are being challenged by that flanking force. Beginning of turn 4, the Swedes try to rally their National Raiders, but they're unable to do so. Mirza Timur himself pulls back to try to rally the disorganized Tatars, and he's also unable to do so. So the forces keep on being disorganized, and each commander can only fight with whatever he has on the table at the time. In their movements, Colonel Amundsen decides to pull out of the veterans and chase down his other Raider force to try to rally it, as he believes that he can bring the Swedes back into the battle. The veterans on the right push up towards that final scouting point, and they set up a defensive formation around it, while the armored veterans push left towards their own final remaining scouting point. Veterans are getting ready to receive the Tatars. In their own movement phase, the Tatars now take advantage of an opening given to them by the Swedes. Mirza Timur noticed that the colonel pulled out of his own forces and now is in the open, and so he orders his warriors to encircle him and attack with their bows. The colonel is wide open, so he's a perfectly valid target, while the veterans are unable to assist their commander in any way. And in the shooting phase, they do actually manage to wound the colonel with their volleys of bow fire. However, the colonel's staff is able to pull him out of the danger and push him back towards the Swedish lines. With all of the confusion and all of the fighting, the colonel will be unable to rally his fleeing Raiders, unfortunately, so those 3 bases of National Raiders will fall off the table. And on the far right, the flanking maneuver, Tatars are charging at the Swedes for holding that scouting point. Start of turn 5. So the veterans in the center have seen this before. They grit their teeth, reload their pistols, and get ready for the Tatar attack. They're surrounded and they know they'll get charged, so they get ready to charge the enemy in front. And the Raiders on the right decide to countercharge the Tatars that are coming up on their flank as well. However, the Tatars seize the initiative and charge the veterans in the rear, before the veterans can get their own impetus going and attack the enemy. On the right, however, the Swedes are able to countercharge the Tatars, and the 2 forces meet head-on. Back to the center, the veterans take some hits from the defensive fire from the Tatars, the bows, as well as the charging Tatars, and suffer some losses and get disorganized and pushed away. While on the right side, the tight formation of the Swedes smashes into the looser formation of the Tatars, causes a bunch of hits, and pushes the Tatars back. So the flanking formation is now disordered and pushed back. Back to the center, the 2 forces fight, and the veterans prove their mettle. They actually are able to score a bunch of hits onto the Tatars, even though they're fighting to their rear, and push them back. So they did survive the first part of this engagement. They're still alive. And on the right side, the veterans, armed with arquebuses, chase down their enemy, cause a couple more hits, and push them off the field. So the right now completely belongs to the Swedes. And end of turn 5. Looks like so, with Colonel Amundsen now decides that he still has a mission to complete. his forces were unable to scout that leftmost point, and so he decides to pull towards the left and get some reconnaissance on the western side of the field. Turn 6, the Tartars can smell a wounded enemy and they prepare to charge the veterans. The veterans try to rally, but Major is unable to get his units in order. They suffered too many losses and can't pull themselves together. So in the movement phase, they just move back towards their lines best they can, but they're still disordered. Meanwhile, Colonel Amundsen pulls up towards the scouting point and does his best to reconnaissance the area. The veterans on the right side regroup after their successful encounter with the Tatar warriors, and they're charging towards the middle to support their comrades. And in the Tatar movement phase, Mirza Timur closes the jaws of the wolf. The Tatar warriors rush at the veterans, attack them from front and back, and this can only end in one way. Meanwhile, Colonel Amundsen is in hot water yet again as the Tatars break off from fighting the veterans and chase him down in open field again. The Swedes are in trouble on the left side, while the almost unharmed veterans on the right side are running to support their comrades, but they will not get there in time. Mirza Timur is just looking onto his enemy, trying to ascertain their value and their threat. In the middle, the Tatars smash into the disordered veterans who fight as bravely as they can, but there can be only one end to this, and they get wiped out, with the surviving stragglers rushing back towards the Swedish lines. Colonel Amundsen takes more bowfire and his horses shot out from underneath him yet again, and yet again his staff is able to save him as they pull him back to safety, and he pushes west away from the enemy and is able to reconnaissance that area. End of the game. You can see the table is in the middle is owned by the Tatars, as Mirza Timur has a stranglehold in the center. However, the eastern side of the field is in control by the Swedes with a very strong veteran formation, and the west just has Colonel Amundsen fighting for his life, trying to get away from the enemy and report back to his general. So what was the outcome? At the end of the game, both forces did complete their missions, fully scouting the field, but the Swedes suffered very heavy losses thanks to the complete destruction of the armored veterans and the national raiders who fled, while the Tatars suffered heavy losses. So that brings the final outcome to be 4-6 for the Tatars, which is a Tatar tactical victory. And in terms of the final game, the two forces met in the middle, with the Tatars pushing the Swedes back away from the center. However, the Swedes did complete their mission, and so the Tatars only have a slight advantage in reconnaissance for the final divisional game, as the Swedes keep on threatening the center and are not allowing the Tatars to take full advantage of their small victory. Next up, both generals will push onto the Pontar Hill and try to take this really important strategic landmark. Hope you enjoyed this game, and I'm trying to get the next game out as quickly as I can, and then get the other ones played, and see you next time on Bite Size Bat Reps.